Hey everybody, and this is yet another album review from 2014. Last night I did the review for Arch Enemy's War Eternal. I said that was a solid, really good album. Today we are going to be reviewing an album that I think is a big contender for what could be Album of the Year, and that is Triptykon's MELANA CHASMATA. For those out there who don't know who Triptykon is, it's pretty much a side band. Now it's become a full-time band for Tom Gabriel Fisher, or Tom Warrior, after Celtic Frost split up in 2008 after the release of MONOTHEIST. 2 years of touring for that album, and then they split up. Tom Warrior wanted to keep playing music, and so he formed a band called Triptykon, which is pretty much an extension of Celtic Frost's album MONOTHEIST in terms of its darkness and its heaviness and its atmosphere. They put out their first album back in around 2010, their debut album. That was just an amazing album that kept that idea from the MONOTHEIST album, from the Celtic Frost cycle, going, but they put in some new things into it. And now we get 4 years since that album came out, 4 years later, we get a new release from Triptykon, and this one is MELANA CHASMATA. Now, a couple months before the album came out, they put out 2 songs out as teasers, 2 standout songs, Boleskine House and Breathing. Both of those songs were just wow. Like, Tom Warrior's just a beast on the vocals and the guitar. I mean, you can't go wrong with anything Tom Warrior does. I mean, anytime you get anything with Tom Warrior, people should check it out, because Tom Warrior is one of those influential figures in heavy metal for his contributions to the European metal landscape for when Hellhammer started, and then Celtic Frost, and how big that band became as far as an influence. And now with Triptykon, they're keeping their old style from the MONOTHEIST album going, except with a more modern, newer twists and turns with the albums. And both of those songs, Boleskine House and Breathing, were excellent songs. If I had to pick one over the other that I liked the most, I probably like the song Breathing a little bit more. But when we get to the actual album, the opening track, Tree of Suffocating Souls, I mean, the one big element, or the 2 big elements I can pull off with the whole album is atmosphere and darkness behind it. And those are 2 things I really loved about this album. Just how atmospheric the songs would get and how dark the songs would get. Like, Tree of Suffocating Souls was the fastest song on the album. It had a real thrash element to it that kept the song going at full speed ahead. Even like other songs like Altar of Deceit, that has a little bit more of a slight death metal influence in terms of the vocal approach. Now, with Tom Warrior's vocal approach on this album, he kept his voice going from MONOTHEIST, except on a couple songs he kind of went into a death metal way with a little more of a growl on some songs. But like, overall, this album pretty much combines, with, at least with Tree of Suffocating Souls, a little bit of a thrash element to it. But for the most part, the album is a mixture of like ambient music, goth, and doom metal, with a tinge of death metal into the mix. And even with how dark it got, even a little bit of like a shock rock kind of thing to it. I mean, even though for their theatrics it's not that way, but like shock, nightmarish soundscape would be another element to this album that I really enjoyed. One of my personal favorite songs on the album was Aurora. I thought, because this was the song where Tom did pretty much clean singing, and I thought he did an excellent job. And I really loved the rhythm section on this song with the drums and the bass and the riffs. Boy, and also with the whole album, it was just rip-roaring through the riffs, just riff after riff after riff after riff, and so heavy. Like, this is probably the heaviest album I've heard from this year, and probably the heaviest album I've heard in heavy metal in quite some time. Like, just the way the guitars were tuned and how distorted it was, and then made that crunching heavy sound that I really like to hear in some modern metal bands nowadays. Even though they still put out heavy music, this, I think, is the heaviest I've heard in a long time. The song Demon Pact was a pretty dark song in terms of, like, the lyrical themes around it, where it's pretty much about ghouls and demons and stuff. But the next two songs were the two highlights of the album, In the Sleep of Death and Black Snow. And Black Snow was probably the second best song on the album, even though it was their longest at about 12.5 minutes. Boy, talk about dark atmosphere, darkness. Oh my god. Just, those are the two words I could describe, at least for the whole album, but especially with that song and In the Sleep of Death. Both of those songs were just brutal and atmospheric and just so dark, doomy, and gothic-y. And pretty much with the whole album, around with its lyrics, it revolves around gothic imagery and stuff like that. And also with the music, it's gotten a lot of doom metal styled riffage, doomy riffing, and the vocal approach of a guttural vocalist. Though on a couple songs like Aurora, where it was clean singing, and then on the song Waiting, it was pretty much all a female vocalist on that song, and the song Waiting was the closer of the album, and it was kind of one of those haunting ways to end an album, and it was very, very doomy, very slow, but very heavy too, and also very mellow at times. But yeah, like, especially like I said with the songs Tree of Suffocating Souls, In the Sleep of Death, and Black Snow, those are the songs that really, really got me going when it came to this album. And also, if I had to say the best song on the album, at least for me personally, it was probably the song In the Sleep of Death, because it just had a lot of different elements to it. Like, it had a little bit of thrash, it had a lot of doomy, a lot of gothic stuff, and the vocal approach a little bit towards a death metal style, but not entirely, since Tom isn't a death metal vocalist. He's just more of a guttural styled metal vocalist. But overall, with MELANA CHASMATA, also I have to mention I love the album cover for this album, done by the great H.R. Geiger, rest in peace. He did a lot of great album work for some bands, like he did the Celtic Frost to Megatherion album cover, and he did the first Triptykon album cover. He even did the album cover for the Carcass album Heartwork. That was really well done. I mean, he's done a lot of art, and with how he does his paintings and stuff, he does an excellent job with it. Even though I'm not really an artist in terms of drawing and stuff, but I can tell with how art can get. Like, this was one of those covers that was really crazy looking and just over the top awesomeness. And sadly, H.R. Geiger passed away 2 months ago, rest in peace. But he left us with one final cover, and it was this, and it was an amazing album cover. But anyways, overall with MELANA CHASMATA, buy this album. This is an album that I would purchase. And I listened to the sample of the album in its entirety. Although there was a bonus track called In Despair that I didn't listen to. I just listened to the standard 9-track album. And like I said, this is an album to purchase. This is a top contender for Album of the Year potential. And just like I said, the two words to describe this album, atmosphere and darkness. put them both together and you get an album like this that was a masterpiece. So, there you have it. MELANA CHASMATA, at the moment, is probably the #1 metal album of the year, at least for now. But the next album we're going to touch on is an album from one of my all-time favorite bands, Mastodon. The next album we're going to talk about is Once More Around the Sun. But until that review, peace.